That's it.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know. I just put some notes like technology innovate very fast. New technology has really meaningful impact on productivity of people, but people don't know how to use this technology.
Right. So
This
what
can-
I was saying before when I was typing, like it just came to me, it's like you have like the forefront of tech innovation, like the forefront of AI, and then marrying that with business success. Like, how do I marry business success with like literally being at the forefront of AI? And how do I do it in a way where it's seamless, it's comfortable, like the forefront of AI is being translated, to my workforce to empower them to do the thing that they were meant to actually be hired for, instead of being bogged down in the minutia of the busy work that AI could, kind of just like remove the heavy lifting for them. So like we're thinking about like from like an outcomes perspective, like if I have a sales team, what can I do more of now that, like I'm being able to live at the forefront of this technology.
Yeah. It's like having people, you say like not in the minutia instead of being more creative and think,
Right.
you know, beyond their domain. That's what
Right.
those tools that help you to do.
Right. Yeah. So now this frees up their brain essentially, right? Where they don't need to be bogged down and they are empowered to create, right? They're empowered to connect. They're empowered to collaborate. They're empowered to do the things that AI cannot do, which is, I know we've talked about this before, but, we'll just say it like, tap into their intuition, tap into their truth, tap into, those innovative ideas that AI actually needs to work off of. And I think that that's the shift that like we're starting to see, is that we would coexist with the AI, right? The AI would be able to allow us to free up all this time to tap into that which we don't usually allow ourselves to tap into. And I think that when folks understand that they're no longer going to have, potentially this idea that, AI is here to take me down. They're instead going to start to understand that AI is here to build me up. So like if we start to translate that into like business success, I think that's the beginning of the conversation, where you'll have your C-suite want to bring you in and start to train from the bottom up the workforce to be able to start creating ways in which that they can free up their time, streamline processes. So like, do you want to talk more about, what that piece would be? Or do you want to, talk
Well,
about this from
I think like
are?
uh, right, like people are afraid of AI, like
Yeah,
it's gonna take their job away, and
yeah,
that's the fear. And I think the way to overcome this fear is by educate
yeah,
them, kind of showcase them like how they can be more productive. It's not that we're taking the jobs away from them. They're
right,
changing the job description,
right,
changing the skills, and all those things that they hate to do. They don't need to do it anymore.
exactly, exactly. So is the thought like getting in with like an education, first concept
You
where,
have to, yeah.
yeah,
You have to start with education because uh, you're seeing a lot of resistance from
mm-hmm,
the bottom up on those tools
right,
because those people are afraid to lose their job, and
right,
they really usually those people don't actually interact with generative AI. They kind of like they just like I don't want to deal with it. I know someone that
right,
is still doing Excel sheet. He's dealing with like millions of rows of Excel sheet every day, and he's just afraid to learn about generative AI because he think that if he's going to learn about it, he's going to find out that that's automation for his job.
right, right.
What
When
this
in actuality, what is it? He can turn around and start doing what instead?
exactly what instead of doing all those like writing formulas for Excel and like adding rows and taking data from that's machines can do it. And
Right,
it's going to free up his time to be more creative. Now he can start thinking about how he can optimize operation.
right,
And how you can really think about the business as a whole. Um, So yeah, so that's a piece that, like, they have to think the way to have those people adapt those toolings is by actually educate them and show
Yeah,
them like the new capabilities, like what
yeah,
you can do as human. Uh,
yeah. So do
that's
you feel like that's your mission? Like your mission is like to sit like the intersection of like these new and ever changing, capabilities that are coming out, literally daily, and then translate them into, what that
yeah.
could mean for
I
business
think
success,
someone
like
needs
within
to
a
do it.
team.
Yeah, I think someone has
Yeah,
to do it, right? Like every
yeah,
company should have like someone that sit with them and kind of like figure out the processes and where they can actually embed those tools and maybe
right.
other tools that can free up people to be more creative, to free up
Yeah,
people to actually start thinking about their business. I think like a lot of the people in the workforce right now, they kind of a lot of them miserable
yeah,
because they
yeah,
don't like
right.
the job.
Just
They just
generally.
don't like the jobs, but they don't want to
Yeah.
automate the job because they're afraid to lose the job. So,
Right, right.
um,
So you have a lot of people with like their head in the sand, kind of not really knowing which way to go, and they're living in a place of fear. And then you have management who kind of knows that they have to start doing this, but I think they don't even know where to start. And
yeah,
so I feel like, having, like your kind of educational offering is really kind of just like a really simple approach to opening up the conversation to the broadest amount of people within your company possible, to allow them to kind of have like this hands-on practical application of like, how does it affect me on an individualized basis? Like, how today could I start to do my job in a way where now my own individual workflow is optimized, and because of that, could I now turn around and actually provide more value to my company? And how have I always wanted to provide more value to my company, which maybe I'm not even freed up to do. Like, what is the thing that I've always wanted to be able to offer? And for companies to be able to even listen to that, I think is huge. And I think that they'll be able to tap into the greatest potential of every single employee when they're ready to even start listening to what that greatest potential really could be. Because we don't even, like, if everyone's miserable in a way, like let's say like 95% of folks are miserable in a way, they're not really potential, like they're not really tapping into their greatest potential at all.
mhm,
So like, let's all really be really honest about that and say that there's a way that just as humans, we can all get together in a room and start to use, the AI in a way where we can increase productivity right off the bat individually, where we can then, cultivate our own talents in a way that we didn't even know that we could do, to turn around to contribute in an even more exciting, creative, and innovative fashion within our company. And then now that we're all together, and now we're starting to see that as a collective, we're here for multiple different groups in the company, and we can start to see how, like, because I am more junior in the company and I talk to, all these folks on the outside of the company, or I like I'm a mid person, and I've got kind of like my ear to the ground on like what processes are broken. Like, now that we're all together in a room and we know how on an individualized basis we can use the tech, what if we all start to see what holes can be kind of plugged, or what processes can be accelerated as a group? And I think that's probably one of the most interesting ways to come about this, because I think a lot of the folks that are doing some similar things that to what you're doing are taking a very top-down approach. Whereas it almost sounds like bringing in education from the bottom up is now bubbling up all of the information that the folks that may not even be listened to, that probably should be listened to, you're almost allowing them to have like this communication structure to the top. So now they can understand how to go to like kind of like a level 2. Do you want to talk about like what a level 2 would be, now that they're starting to point out that there are these kind of like cross-functional processes that AI can also solve, not just an individual basis, but across the board.
right. Another point before we jump into like the level 2, like what other companies can do, it's like I think the challenge, right? So the CEO, like the executive, they want to implement those tools, right?
Mm,
Then they have resistance from the bottom, and a lot of those
mm,
CEOs afraid to introduce those tools. They know that's what they need to do, but they're afraid to
right.
these tools because they're afraid of the resistance, they're afraid people maybe gonna
Right.
be leaving. So that's like one challenge. The other challenge is you really need different type of hiring, like
Mm,
type of hiring strategy for those that you're looking at people that big pictures, innovation. You think about people not so when you hire those people, you hire them for specific tasks. Now you ask them to do more creative work, which some of them going to be okay with that, and some
right.
of them, the one that want to stay in their lane, those are the one probably going to suffer the most.
Right.
So I think like if a CEO wants to implement, I think it's a lot about trust and transparency. So you have to communicate transparency and trust. Like nobody living here, nobody's like, we're not replacing anybody with bots, but we're expecting now everybody to kind of like lean into those tools and
Right.
you know like
Right. And so are you thinking then, you have to have this top-down approach where the C-suite is saying, we have to now be ready to listen to what it is that is really essentially the truth of our employees, because, let's just face it, we all took on jobs that we really didn't want for the most part, because we just were doing it for an outcome. We were just doing it for money, so this can actually allow the C-suite to say, well, this person could be really instead in this kind of a role, but I need to be willing to listen to the truth of this employee, and this employee needs to actually know what their truth is. And I think that's even a bigger conversation, because we've all been kind of trained out of our truth. Like, this is the time for every single individual to ask themselves, well, what do I love the most?
exactly.
What is it that I've always wanted to do? And if I'm in a safe space, if I'm in an environment that's willing to listen to that, now we can really, really be competitive, because here's where it gets really exciting.
Right, but this is like a mental shift, right? This is
Yeah,
like
it's a mental shift.
a
It is,
mental shift that
yeah,
like it's not about just like introducing tech. It's a
yeah,
it's like changing the mindset of employees. I don't know how to do it, but right, like
right,
it's like there's I'm sure there's some activity in companies that they can actually start offering to kind of like think big, right? Like think
right.
out of the
And
out.
so you won't need as many employees. This is like, now we're gonna get into like the
That's the
controversial.
reality.
Yeah, you won't need as many employees.
You don't need a lot of more a lot more employees because all the busy work someone like the machines doing it.
Right,
You need like individual that think big, that have big pictures.
right.
Um, so I'm
So
not saying, but
would you say like you could take like a 10,000 person company and shrink it down to what size?
you could probably shrink it out at least 50%,
Yeah,
at least
right.
50%,
Using like if we were to coexist with the
just by
AI.
automation, like these studies,
Yeah,
like all these generative AI tools, and it's like increase productivity by 50%. So,
right,
if you just want to optimize and automate things, I think 50%. If you really want to go down into values of like kind of like what we're doing, probably there's more, kind of start
right, right,
where am I wasting my time? Um, but yeah, so I think like with this movement, we're going to see a lot of kind of either people who's going to adapt to it and stay in the company that they are and kind of help them to grow.
right,
That don't
right,
adapt them, they're gonna have a problem. Some
right,
people that want to adapt, they maybe they're still not gonna have a place, but they're gonna be more creative. So,
right, right.
you know,
Which is great, which is
it's
exciting.
great. If they're open to it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. That's the whole thing. You have to be open.
there's companies today, like 13 people companies, like one of the largest large language models, 13 people. It's
Exactly,
100 million dollars
exactly.
in like funding, huge company. It used to be like this kind of
Yeah,
company talking about like
right.
hundred and hundred employees, 13 people.
So this is where it becomes really interesting, because you can just start a company like where it used to take, tons of funding and tons of people, but like if you know how to coexist with the AI, like I was just talking with our son in the car, about, what my major was and, how I learned what I do right now. And I was like, I didn't learn it in college at all. And
Right.
to be quite honest, like, if you understand the curriculum of AI, like he was asking me the other day, like, how do I, build a website? I'm like, you literally, if you know how to ask, like Chat GPT,
Yeah,
you can have the chat like code a site for you. And he was like,
yeah.
so like to understand like all of those folks, like let's say like we right away, like you're working with, companies that want to stay, at the forefront of tech, right? They want to stay super competitive and, they're wanting to then bring you in and they can potentially have 50% of their workforce leave just because of like these incredible innovations and optimizations, right? The folks that are leaving, this isn't a sad time for them because now this is your time to ask yourself. This is what we were saying before. Either you stay in the company and ask yourself, who have I always wanted to be? What do I love the most? What is my passion? Or you leave the company and you ask those things and you start your own company. Because if you learn how to coexist with the AI, you are now empowered to be able to do that with just a handful of people because like you spotted a hole in the market, right?
Like I'm going to say like, oh my God, what's going to happen to the economy because of all those toolings? And
Right.
in reality, I think the economy is going to boom.
Yes.
Like
This
the
is,
people that
yeah.
are leaving, they're going
Yes.
to think about other ideas that nobody, like they didn't have time to think about the idea, but they have
Yes.
a lot of ideas in their heads.
Yes.
So I think we're going to see a lot of innovation, a lot of like economy is going to accelerate because of that.
Yes.
That's how we should think about it.
I agree with you. And I feel like this is the most exciting time. And I think you're going to see kind of like the falling down of like your traditional corporate hierarchy, just because we don't need as many people in a company anymore. We don't need as much red tape. We don't need as much minutia, which is amazing. So what that means is it's not that like we have whole like millions of people out of work. They are now empowered with the ability to create their own company, which is a handful of people because they can now tap into the thing that AI could never tap into. And I know we've spoken about this before, which is higher consciousness. So like you now have the time to slow down and actually go within and figure out that part of you that you left behind when you first took on a role when that you didn't want to do, for like all of these decades. You get to pull out that truth. Who was I when I was a kid? What did I love to do the most? And actually start to cultivate that just from a place of pure joy because the AI is waiting for you to sit there and tell them, here's what I came up with, and then use the AI in order to execute.
Yep.
And that coexistence would allow us to create what I believe is going to be the new corporate, which we've started here as well, which is kind of like these like pods, like pod structure. Maybe it's like 5 to 10 to 15 individuals. That is a company now, and that's what's super exciting because it's limitless opportunity. Like everyone can be able to finally create in a way that they've always wanted to. And I now hear that products and goods will be less expensive because they're produced using AI. So we can start to actually have this mental shift to say, well, what if we didn't need as much money? What if we didn't need as much? What if we could tap into the thing that we've always wanted to create, which allows us to feel joy, right? Like feel joy before we needed to have an outcome because we've become the outcome. So it's like a complete shift. And I think that this is why this is happening because people are sick and tired of living the old way, making all this money, but still feeling burnt out and not happy.
Yeah, maybe that's the meaning of this transformation. If you think about like from a spiritual perspective, like why
Yeah,
is it happening? Because
right.
we definitely went the wrong way,
Yes.
right? Like we just like we're going after things and after money, after titles, after like let me be like work on these specific companies and like because it sounds good on my resume. Nobody
Right.
really thinking like why they want to do the things that they do. And I think like these tools allow you to do everything that you want, right? Like, so if you wanted to start a company in the past, you had to have a lawyer, you have to have like a designer, and if you have like a brand strat, yeah, you have to have like 5 people before you can actually say anything. Or
At
like,
a minimum.
yeah,
Yeah.
now you can sit anywhere, and you really can be all of this in one
Yeah.
person and even more, right? You can be
Yeah.
an engineer that build a website. You can be like a designer. You can be like a lawyer. You can be like a CEO. So yeah, so it's a really exciting time.
So do you want to give me like some examples of like how you can use the chat to do like some of these things? Like I know one of the cool ones we were talking about was like, yeah, I can, now code a website, with
Right.
chat GBT. Like I'm literally like our son's like,
Yeah, no,
okay.
there's a lot of things that you can do with generative AI that, most people, first of all, I think like, I don't know what's the percentage, but maybe like 10% you use the ChatGPT the way to the extent that they can do, right?
Mm.
A lot of us kind of just do summarization and they just like, like formatting emails and things like that. But you
Right.
can do a lot more. We can do like data analysis, can do coding. So what that's going to open up like new skills for people. So my background is engineering. Like if you needed to build a website or you needed to do like automation, you
Mm.
need to be an engineer. You need to know Python or Java or some one of those language. Today you don't need to do it. Language is not a thing anymore. When it comes to engineering, you like
Wow.
I
Like to
have a
learn
background
a
of
language.
engineering, so I know how to code, but I don't know all the language. But with ChatGPT, I can code in any language today. I can just build any application really quickly with language I've never seen before. And anyone, there's something called no coding. That's kind of a movement of we moving into an era of no code, you know.
Wow.
So you're basically going to be able to speak what you want, and you're going to get the code that you need, and you're going to host the code, and or you run it on a computer and do that. So you can automate a lot of things. So that's what I'm teaching in the workshop is non-engineering that going to be able to write code,
Mm.
execute code to automate their processes.
So who could use code? Like, are you saying that like,
You can
like
use code.
an entry level like admin could
Anyone, obviously,
code?
they're not going to be able to do like big infrastructure yet.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
they're going to be able to do all kind of automation.
Mm.
Like on the workflow. Like for example, you have like tons of images on the computer, and you need to sort them through classify the images. I don't know, you download the image from many, many resources and you have a
Mm.
folder with all the images, thousands of images. You're going to be able to maybe classify those images with code,
Mm.
with
Mm.
ChatGPT.
Oh,
You're going to be able to analyze the data. Imagine that you have, you like in marketing and you download a lot of CSV files about tracking and clicks and all those things. You can actually, you can put the files in ChatGPT directly and start analyzing it, give
mm.
graph and stats and insights. But if it's a big data, you can actually write code that actually going to do machine learning, you can do many things with code.
And build like graphs and charts and things.
Exactly.
Wow.
You can
Wow.
do a graph and chart. You can, the sky is the limit. With generative AI. The thing is like you're always going to be limited to
Mm.
individual use, right? So
Mm.
if you kind of use ChatGPT as individual, or you're not gonna have visibility on the company's data. You only have
Mm.
visibility on your own data, so you can
Mm.
download it and just
Mm.
company allow you can drag and kind of analyze the data, kind of an
Mm.
individual impact, right?
Mm.
But if
Mm.
you want like organization impact, you
Mm.
need to start deploying different kind of tooling.
Mm.
That's like we talked about level one, level two. Level one is company that maybe not big on data, but they have a lot of like processes and individual contributors that are doing things, a lot of kind of administrative work.
Mm.
They can gain a lot from just using ChatGPT. But
Just bare bones, just getting in there.
that's
Yeah.
very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then if your company has some data and you have like multiple system,
Wait, before you go in, like define get a lot. Like, is it like 10x your productivity? Like how much more productive?
everybody say 10x. I think,
Yeah.
and some people say 10 hundred, x
Yeah.
100.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. Like
limitless, limitless.
like I'm right. My background is engineering, but like I'm doing like in the last 10 years leadership role, so I'm not actually coding. So I'm like
Mm,
kind of was removed from coding for many years, which was always a problem, right? Like when you remove
right,
coding, it's kind of like you forget. It's not like a bike. You just go on the bike and just riding the bike again. You just forget. You just
right, right.
forget
It'll
everything,
fall
right?
off.
But because of ChatGPT, I'm able to pick it up from the time that I left
Wow.
coding, and even better,
Yeah,
even better,
even
like,
better.
so it's
Yeah.
fascinating. Fascinating.
Wow. Yeah, no, I remember like when you would learn a new code and you would have to like read a book for like
Read a book, right?
yeah, it
Exactly.
would be that kind of a thing. And
Like when
now,
you right,
like because you know what to prompt, this is prompt engineering, you know what to say, and then you know how to stitch together the code, you can build an infrastructure for an organization. So like, can you talk more about that piece of it? Because I saw you do like an entire framework, which you said like, oh, this normally would take me a year in like what, a week?
right,
Like,
right. I don't know if a year, but right, like, yeah, I've done like 30 days of work that usually gonna take me probably like 6 months, like
wow.
even more, right? With the language
Yeah.
that I wasn't familiar with.
Right. And
So
so now you were going to like a stage two, you were talking about like from a readiness perspective, are you saying that like, so like the product that, or the services that you're offering is like, okay, now you guys are like a little bit more mature as far as like data, kind of like adaptation goes. So now you're ready to use your data, with kind of like marrying it with the forefront of like AI to do what? Like then what?
right. So one of the most challenging things in companies is silo data, right? So you have like many systems. A lot of those data are definitely duplicate. If you take like HR data and
Mhm,
finance data, they're the same people, like they're like, like expense report and HR and like so and they're very siloed. So if you kind of like use like every system individually, you get what the system allow you to see. But what if you're able to merge the finance data and the HR data
mhm,
and the engineering data and the analytics data, and you
mhm,
as an individual you're gonna have a system that actually have visibility of all of this.
mm,
That's
So
what
talk to me about that, like the ability, like it's like using the brain of a chat GPT with your own company's data, that kind of a thing.
right.
Yeah.
So you use the GPT as like a context, and
Mhm,
reasoning, right? So they're kind of understanding more of like the GPT is kind of a front end interface from the user to
mhm,
your system, right? So
mhm.
understand what the user wants, what kind of query I need to write.
Right.
GPT is going to write queries, going to ask questions, your
Mhm.
data, and bring back the data and augment it and answer the question for the user. So if I'm asking
Wow.
a question like what's the prediction, like what's our financial prediction for Q4, um, I'm going to get the data that kind of relevant to this prediction and serve it back to the user. So it's not just like it used to be that all the system works like I'm asking for data, I'm getting just one piece of data.
Right.
That you
And then I
get
have to go someplace else.
right.
Yeah.
Imagine that now, like when you search for something, it's coming from all different places, right? It's coming from
Right.
finance context, it's coming from HR context, and everything get merged together. So now my
Right.
answer when I'm asking about prediction, it's not just about the finance, it's about people.
Right. Right. So like you're kind of like marrying disparate data sources, and you can see right away how you're going to get better, more accurate information, and how you can like optimize and streamline processes. Like when I used to be in sales, like if I got a meeting with, let's say, like a telecommunications provider, like then I would go need to meet with someone on my sales team who had a meeting with like
Right,
that same kind
exactly.
of company. I would have to know what kind of deck they did, what they sold, how much it costs, like how the conversation went, like how the
How long
follow
that took
was.
you to do?
This will take like a week. you
Exactly.
know, and it does. It takes a week, and then I still have to build my deck.
Right,
You
right.
know, so like it sounds like even just like from that single use case alone, like if we married all of that information, like I would have to go sit with the tech team and get like specific things, like, you know, like there would be so many different, like I feel like we're spending so much time like running
Just
around
looking
trying
for
to
it.
marry disparate data, you know, that like that is like what people are essentially like what their roles are. You know, that's what people are getting paid for. You know, like if I didn't have to do that, I could definitely way more 10x like the number of meetings I had.
Yeah, there's a
You
study that
know,
says
like,
workers spend 3 hours a day of just looking for knowledge.
just looking for knowledge. So
Mhm.
it's like a chat GPT functionality using your company's own data, right? So like that's kind of like your stage two piece. So not only did you like as an individual in stage one already learn to optimize your own processes, you know, just by like sending a better outreach email,
Yep.
for example, you know, or learning how to like code easily for like a process that I need for like something that I need to organize as a brand marketer, something like that, like real individualized before I'm using my company's like, you know, unsiloed data. That's just step one of like accelerating productivity. But now we're talking about a step two where like how do you bring all of that together in step two? Is it like I think you had mentioned like the knowledge hub, like is that
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
build?
right. So what do, you basically democratizing knowledge in organization. So knowledge become free, everybody
Yes,
can access it at
yes,
any time. They don't need to make those meetings. Let me ask the marketing people, like, what's the budget?
right,
Like, let me like set up those meetings, and he's not available.
right,
I'm gonna meet him next week. You give the your employees access to any data that they want, they're either going to prompt it back to like ChatGPT to do other crazy things,
right,
but that's what those tools do. Like it's
right.
democratizing knowledge.
Right. This is amazing because like I feel like we used to just literally hire people for their knowledge.
Right.
And I feel like this is like the major like evolution in what's happening within tech and AI and like how you're bringing the forefront like into, you know, actually translate that and then influence kind of like these like you know, into business success essentially. You know, that like you actually no longer need to hire for knowledge
Yeah.
in a way, because like what if now employees like they're hired for like
Yeah. What the
for
heck?
creativity, you know what I
What?
mean? They're hired for like the reason why you really wanted to
All
bring
right.
them
What
in.
is it? Right. Like, what are you gonna hire people for? I guess like, I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe no skills even, right? Like the character, maybe,
Yeah, and like their ability to
ability
tap into
to
their intuition, their ability to create, their ability to innovate, their
creative,
ability to connect with others.
curious, right?
Yeah, their ability to be curious. Yeah, their ability to try different things, you know, and then be okay with it not working. You know, like this is kind of, I
Yeah.
think
How
the
do you,
big,
right? That's interesting, but that's maybe for another time because
yeah,
like
that's
that's
maybe the
going
new
to
word
change.
for it.
Like how do you even measure those people? You used to go to like, I need a skill in my company. I'm going to interview a specific person. I'm going to ask him all
Right,
this question. If he answers
right,
right, I'm going to hire him.
right,
How do you measure curiosity?
right.
Measure, how do you find those people? You
It's
know?
all gonna change. It's all gotta change. Like that's definitely a bigger philosophical
Yeah.
conversation that we can have like in our next podcast. But like this is the whole thing, like where you know data is now democratized, you know, and it's not about what you know, but how you use the information and you know how you power it through what you love. I think that's like what it's going to come down to. And those are like really hard conversations because we've never allowed ourselves to do that before because it's always been memorize stuff and then shoot it back out again. That's how you know we teach in school and it's no longer going to be about that either because it's all available on in you know in ChatGPT. All of it now
Yeah.
is available. Like do you feel like what you're disseminating, you know, needs to be brought to schools. And this is before we even talk about your stage three or your knowledge hub, but I
Yeah.
feel like that's big.
Yeah. Like school is a separate, like it's another kind of conversation because definitely like the current school system, they're still teaching knowledge.
Yeah, they're still teaching memorization.
Memorization, knowledge,
Yeah, we watch our kids learning,
that here.
and memorizing things, and we just were like, that's so, you so don't need to do that.
Yeah, you don't need to
And
do it.
like, I'll be in the car with Shiloh like just before and be like, what do you love? Like, just focus on like the thing, like your purpose, like the reason why you're here, like what it is that gives you meaning. And if you don't know what that is, just follow your curiosity. Because he's like, I don't know what I like. I don't know, because they train that out of you. They train your imagination away from you. So now the AI frees us up to cultivate that. And that's like where we're going with this. So like, if you're a company and you now are like, okay, I want to embrace this, I want to create a knowledge hub, like, do you need to have like some kind of like readiness from like a data perspective?
Yeah, you do need to be readiness, but I think we should pause here.
Okay.
Because yeah,
You
yeah,
have to go.
you have to go.
Okay.
That was good.
Yeah, you pause.
I'm gonna pause. Okay.